To understand Ukraine, you must also look at Europe and the world. And when we talk about Europe's history, one name keeps coming back: the Cossacks. For some, they were wild horsemen of the steppe. For others, just rebels against kings and empires. But historians see something deeper. The Cossacks were Europe's defenders, its frontier warriors, its shield against the East. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Europe faced a massive challenge. The Ottoman Empire was growing stronger, pressing from the south and east. Its armies were feared. Its fleet controlled the Black Sea. Its influence stretched deep into Europe.
But on the borderlands of today's Ukraine, a new force appeared. Free men, runaways from serfdom, adventurers, fighters.
They called themselves Cossacks. They built fortresses on islands of the Dnipro. They lived by their own laws. They elected their leaders, and they trained constantly for war. To the Ottomans, they were enemies. To the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, sometimes allies, sometimes troublemakers. But to Europe, they were an unexpected shield. Cossack boats, called chekas, slipped into the Black Sea at night. They raided Ottoman ports. They struck fear into the mighty empire. On land, they fought in countless battles, against Tatars, against Turks, sometimes against Russians, sometimes even against Poles. But in every fight, they defended the idea of freedom, not only for themselves, but for the borderlands of Europe. Zich reminds us, the Cossacks were not isolated. They were part of a bigger story, a story of Europe facing the East. Without the Cossacks, the Ottoman push into Central Europe might have been far stronger. When Vienna stood against the Ottomans, Cossack riders were there. When Polish kings needed defenders, Cossack banners flew in the front lines. They were rough, they were violent, but they carried something unique, a democratic spirit. At the siege, their fortress, every man had a vote. The leader, the hetman, could be elected or deposed. This was not the monarchy of Europe. This was not the Sultan's absolute rule. This was something new. A society of warriors built on freedom, equality, and brotherhood. Historians see this as more than just survival. It was a political experiment, one that inspired others. One that showed that even on Europe's edge, ideas of liberty could thrive. And here lies the paradox. The Cossacks defended Europe with weapons, but they also defended it with ideas: freedom, self-rule, resistance to tyranny. In time, the great powers tried to control them. Poland, Russia, even the Ottomans at times. But the Cossack spirit was hard to tame. Rebellions erupted. Wars shook the region. And out of this turmoil, the seeds of modern Ukraine were planted. Zich argues that Europe cannot understand itself without looking at its frontier. And on that frontier stood the Cossacks. They were not perfect heroes. They could be brutal. They fought for pay as often as for faith. But history is not about perfection. It is about impact. And the Cossacks had a massive impact. They kept the Ottoman Empire in check. They shaped the destiny of Eastern Europe. They inspired generations with their fight for freedom. So when we look at the map of Europe today, with Ukraine at its heart, we should remember Ukraine was not only a crossroads, it was a shield. And the Cossacks were its defenders. This is why, in Hritzak's view, the story of the Cossacks is not just Ukrainian history. It is European history, a story of warriors, a story of freedom, a story of a frontier that protected a continent.